The intention of Natural Freedom League is to expand the understanding of natural law, which is based on objective morality, and to expose the illegitimacy of the belief in authority, and thus the inherent immorality of all government.
We be the Natural Freedom League, cause we become no longer unvegan. We seek in the wisdom, and that's why we did come to this prison of prism. And that's why the beat thumps, and that's why we speak up. We be the Natural Freedom League, cause we become no longer unvegan. We seek in the wisdom, and that's why we did come to this prison of prism. And that's why the beat thumps, and that's why we speak up. We be the
My mic is muted. Welcome to Natural Freedom League. This is episode 75. I'm your host, John Rowland, here once again with my producer and co-host, Chill Will Keller. What's up, Will?
What's up, my brother? Hold on a second. I'm having a tech issue. I'm gonna have to leave and come back in. It's doubling up.
Okay.
So there's a delay. Hold on. Sorry.
Yeah, man, getting our bearings about us, getting back into the game, the podcast game. We haven't done a Natural Freedom League episode in a few weeks, and I started doing the Natural Universal Spirit channel and doing some interviews and some different content on there, and wanting to get back to some episodes with me and Will. And this is a topic that Will and I have talked about a lot, and I've really just been pondering over the occult, contemplating the occult. And I think this will probably end up being a series, because as I'm sitting here writing notes, I realize I just have so many thoughts and questions, and I also want to listen to Will and his thoughts and experience with the occult. So I don't know how much you heard that, Will, but basically it was just kind of saying we took a couple of weeks off, and some of the solo stuff that I was doing, which I'm sure a lot of these people have seen, and then getting back to doing some Natural Freedom League podcasts, and how this is a topic that we talk about often, and we thought would be a good one to do an episode on with you and I.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. This is a very important topic, a misunderstood topic. A topic that is ignored and brushed off. And I think even people that understand or have a awareness of this topic still need to go deeper and simplify and have more of a modern approach to it, the concept of occultism. So it's going to be interesting to see where this goes.
Yeah. So real quick before we start, I want to thank all the people that have donated. We really appreciate all the support. It really helps us to keep it going. And so I appreciate that. Specifically, we got a donation recently from a gentleman who wrote a nice letter, which I've been meaning to tell you about, Will. We got to check the email, but he wrote a real nice letter saying that he appreciated our work, and the direct way that we teach natural law. And so yeah, I think
awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool,
man. That's that's so refreshing. Very grateful to get those type of messages and people that donate. This is why we do this, right? To inspire people, to create awareness, to make people think and contemplate, and that's just really good to hear. So appreciate everyone that supports.
Yeah, that guy actually said he was writing a book, and that our work helped him to figure it out, or kind of like narrow it down to what he wanted to write. So yeah, it's awesome. Really good to hear. And we want more people to get involved, and we appreciate all the support that everyone has given. So let's start off talking about the occult. First of all, Will, why don't you define occult?
Excellent. Yeah, so the word occult, OCCULT, it's derived from oculus, which means concealed, hidden, hidden from the eye. So simply putting, the occult is hidden knowledge. That's all that it means right there. Now, you can ask yourself what type of knowledge. That gets into a whole nother category, but simply put, the occult is hidden knowledge. Simple as that.
Right. And I'm going to point out real quick this quick observation that came to me at some point once I got into the occult, which was actually pretty recent for me. But what I realized is, we think of occult when we hear that it's hidden from the eye. And I think, at least for me, I initially think it's being hidden from us by somebody, right? So there's that way of looking at it, that this information is actually hidden from us. That's why it's occulted. However, it's also occulted because it's literally talking about the invisible. It's talking about spirit. It's talking about unseen energies, things that are outside our senses. So it literally, these things that are occulted, this knowledge that is occulted by people who want to keep it, is also literally occulted from our eyes. It's dealing with spiritual realities and the bigger question of what it is we are doing here and why we are here. So just something I wanted to point out while we were talking about the term and the definition.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'll add this too. And when I get into my individual work, I always make this distinction that there is the invisible realm, the energetic. We have a small visible spectrum of light that we can see, and there's a huge spectrum out there. So this is what metaphysics is. Metaphysics, the word, means beyond physics. It is the invisible. It is the energetic. It is the mental realm, right? So physics would be the physical. In occultism, metaphysics, the invisible, and physics, the physical, are both in there, right? You can't have one without the other. They're both understood, and so they go hand in hand.
Right. It's more about understanding how they interact, how the whole system works together. It's really asking the biggest questions. And I think we'll get into this later, but there is a connection with religion in a sense as well. I mean, you could look at what we modern day consider religion as a way to hide this deeper occult knowledge by giving us usually an externalized version of it, some literal story, and it's we get that exoteric version of it. And again, those are often meant, I believe, to occult the occult information and misdirect us, misguide us, simplify us, don't get us to think on those deeper esoteric levels. But I would like to say that for me, my exploration, before I graduated high school, but especially once I graduated high school and felt like I could learn about whatever I wanted to, I was drawn to religion. And I mean, in a way, you could almost look at, I was specifically drawn to Eastern religions, and you could look at Eastern religions in our society as occult information to some extent. And the more you look into it, the more you see the differences. But But then again, you realize even our own religions have occult roots. So, but to me, like one of my first things that I explored was the I Ching. And the I Ching is, or I Ching, it's the Book of Changes from China. And it basically is an oracle. And you can actually, you drop quarters and you get certain values and you can ask this thing questions. And apparently the Chinese empires used the I Ching to decide what, whether to go to war or, marrying their, family off to different people. And then supposedly the legend goes that Lao Tzu was the person who would question the I Ching. And when he stopped working for the empire and he left, he gave somebody all the knowledge. He told somebody all the knowledge that he gained from using the I Ching. I believe Confucius said that if he could do anything different in his life, he would read the I Ching more. Another interesting thing about the I Ching is the pattern that it uses, the zeros and ones. That's the binary code. Well, in the I Ching, it's broken line, solid line. If you change that to zeros and ones, that's the binary code. That's what runs computers. So right there, you see these things, you learn these things, and you're like, wow, like there's something magical there, or synchronistic there. There's those types of things. When I see those my whole life, I think that's God. That's proof of something going on. And you could even call that occult information, right? That connection that I'm making, or not, I'm not making it, is a connection that's just there, that this, ancient oracle is also the code that runs computers. Yeah, you either have to think that's a coincidence or that it's just by chance, or you realize that there is some type of deeper energetic system running that we only see through those pattern recognitions. So
Yeah.
Just wanted to touch on that. And again, the I Ching, I mean, I don't really know if you would consider that occult information, but that was my first step into it. And I don't even think I even realized that would be considered occult information at that time.
Yeah, no, it definitely is, because I mean, there's categories in occultism. I think probably the most well known, or not known, but aware of, would be divination, right? I mean, even in the exoteric, the outer realm, the information that the majority of people know about, they think of occultism as divination. But that is a part of occultism. The I Ching, the runes, tarot, these are all mechanisms, tools that can be used to interact with the subtle links of the hidden realm, right? To make those connections in the present, and they can be used for great self-development and information gain about nature, how the natural world operates. So absolutely, and divination's a whole category. And you said something else that I wanted to say. This is what I wanted to talk about, a little bit of history of occultism, right? Because occultism dates back to, I mean, ancient times, really. It's always been here. It's been the elders, the wise ones, the Volvas, the Pythagoras, the Platonists. They always, these are the people, the deep thinkers, the philosophers, the ones that are really seeking truth. They've always got together in groups and exchanged ideas and talked about information. And the majority of people weren't doing that. But in the Western world, especially when Christianity took over, this is when occultism really started to go deeper, right? Because you had Christianity that was murdering anyone that looked outside of their ideology. So this is how information or knowledge gets taken into the shadows. It gets hidden. Some of it hidden on purpose by the social engineers of that time, right? They don't want the majority of people to know about divination for self-development or how the laws of nature work, right? For their own agenda. And then other people that had that knowledge also occulted that to keep it away from, or to keep the social engineers from knowing that they had that kind of knowledge, and they would pass it down. It started out in an oral tradition, so that link won't be broken. And and then, as time progresses, we see these occult renaissance and revivals happen throughout history that we can kind of talk about as well. But that was definitely a huge turning point, is when Christianity really took hold, especially during Rome, towards the fall of Rome.
Yeah.
And the destruction of pagans and animists.
Yeah. And especially, that's our sort of modern version of it, right? Because then you end up with these occult practices like Freemasonry and Rosicrucianism, which are all kind of biblically based in a way. There's kind of a connection between those and the Bible. But those are based on more ancient knowledge from other cultures and ethnicities. For example, Hinduism, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hinduism is a lot of what the whole Western world is based on. It's like the Greeks took that knowledge from them. The Egyptians, right? Or Cometians, right? They had their own same type of sort of like tiered levels of knowledge and rituals that you would go through.
Yeah.
Man.
Which is where Hermeticism comes from.
Yep.
The Egyptian Cometian traditions. So, and a couple other categories as well. Even magic, the art and science of creating change in consciousness with the will. Right, this was a big part of it as well, of occultism in general. And then the initiation process, which is the actual changing of the self and the implementation of using the will to cause change within the self, to get to these higher states of consciousness and awareness. So yeah,
I'll tell you something interesting about that. So, like I said, like when I first got out of high school, got into the I Ching, I actually read the original translation from it was from Chinese to German, then German to English, and it had the foreword by Carl Jung. And he makes a lot of really interesting points. I'm actually thinking about just reading the introduction to it and just posting it as some content. He has a really good point that he's saying how in the Western world they won't openly accept something like the I Ching, because the I Ching takes into account that the universe, like the chance in the universe, is not chance in the way that the Western world thinks of it, right? So a Western person would take this thing and you're supposed to drop the three coins 6 times, right? And you're going to get a certain symbol and value, and basically like a horoscope, a reading of the situation, whatever, based on what you asked. What Jung says is, in the Western world, the Western mind is skeptical and would say, oh yeah, well, what happens if I ask it another time? What happened? And they would do like a scientific test. I'm going to do it 10 times and see how many different answers I get. And like Jung is saying, if you have that mentality, it won't work for you. Right. And, it's just an interesting point, I mean, like the Western world, we are, very materialistic, scientific, everything has to be proven, everything, and we're at the extreme end of that now, where we think that, well, if this is scientifically proven, then everybody should take this medication because it's scientifically proven. right? And I think that it's a little it's out of balance right now, clearly. But there is some good to that skeptical mindset as well. Again, it's all about being in balance. But the point I was going to make, I started going to a Buddhist temple, and was learning to meditate and learning their religious practice, or whatever you want to call Buddhism. And when the woman was teaching us, because they were female nuns, they were called, and the Shifu was teaching us, she said, don't expect to get any special powers from meditating, right? Like, she was saying, like, meditation is kind of like, it's not supposed to be for any reason. It's just for the sake of meditating. And you shouldn't expect to gain any special, knowledge or power from this. And it was funny because in the back of my mind, I was like, that's kind of part of the reason why I'm interested in this, right? Like, you kind of are searching for this deeper understanding of like how the world works, how I can manifest things, how, what my powers are. You hear about like yogis and things like that who can project their body and show up in a different place, and they can fast for a bunch of days and be fine. And you hear about these amazing things that people can do. I mean, even obviously being raised Christian and hearing all the things of Jesus, there sort of is this subconscious, I think for me, I realized I was looking for that. And I think, as you go deeper into the occult, tying this into magic, you do see a point where, you are using this information to potentially manifest different outcomes,
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the reasons that I kind of gravitated towards occultism in my later 20s, early 30s is when I intentionally was seeking it out. But ever since I was young, I was always fascinated with the invisible, the secrets of nature, the human potential. So the rejected knowledge of the Western world, which that is occultism, right? I mean, in a nutshell. And so I think it's innately in us, in our blood codes, deep within, that there is a knowing that the potential, the human potential, and the energy is great. It's just a matter if someone is going to make that connection and follow it, look into it, that will kind of set someone on a path of occultism.
Right. And it's in that sense, it is being occulted from us. It is being hidden from us because for different reasons, right? So there's the old belief, don't cast pearls before swine, which is actually something that Jesus said, but other people said it too. Again, the Bible is pretty much based on older stories. But this idea is an idea within the occult, that part of the reason why you don't want to just give this information to the masses is because you don't know what they're going to do with it. And there is some power behind it. There is some code or some understanding of how to manifest things, that, these people, in a way, at a certain point in time, were concerned with what the masses would do with that. But if you look at like the founding fathers, right? I think it was Benjamin Franklin or one of them who said, or it might have been Thomas Jefferson, but anyway, he said that an uneducated populace could never be free. Mm-hmm. Right. And so that sort of flies in the face of don't cast pearls before swine, because to be truly educated would to be to delve into the occult. I mean, this is being educated about what matters, being educated, not just to manifest things, but to know who you are, what you are, where you are, how you're connected to nature, how spirit and matter work together. These are all the things that we should be learning and be, becoming adept at. And instead, they're giving us, the liberal arts and, just kind of, again, like very left brained, mathematics and scientific thinking, and not balancing that out with the spirit.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, to demystify what occultism is, it is the study of self consciousness and how nature, the natural world, operates. Right? I mean, this needs to be. It's fundamental. It's the foundational principles of our existence in this reality field. I mean, we need to know the rules of the game, right? For a player in the game, you got to know the rules. So, and the majority of people do not understand this. And the word occultism has been heavily indoctrinated into people to mean evil. Christianity had a huge play in this as well, and even in modern entertainment and movies and stuff, they make it seem like it's devil worshiping, it's witchcraft, it's they put this Hollywood variant on it. But simply put, it's the study of the human psyche, how the human being operates, and how the natural world operates. That's exactly what it is.
It's kind of interesting that you take the O off of occult and you get the cult, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that O is the spirit, right? The occult is using your own eyes to explore this reality, where the cult is like, this is the reality, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
Good
if
point.
you look at that definition of religion, right? Religion is to bind, right? To bind again, or to bind back, right? And obviously, again, first image in your mind, depending on what you're thinking about, is that religion is holding people back, right? You could look at it that way. But thinking about it a little deeper, I'm like, well, the understanding of what God is a process of binding back, right? In terms of in your mind, like, so for example, when I started reading the I Ching, my friend's dad had a book, and it was Wisdom from the I Ching, and it had this story about, imagine you're God, you are all knowing, you're everything, you're the potential for everything. What would you do? You'd get bored because you have no one to talk to. You have no one, who could talk to God, right? Yeah, and nothing's above you. You're just you're all. You're the all. So what would you do? You would play a game where you start manifesting everything that can come from your potentiality, and you make all of those pieces, those fractals of you, forget that they're God. And then the game is that they slowly, once everything is manifested, everything slowly starts figuring out it's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that process to me has always been like something that's kind of innate in my mind, is that when you contemplate what God is, you're always kind of going back to like, okay, how would this thing, if there was just this one thing and then it splits, and then so now we're like on the end of the branch, on a leaf, and you're trying to go back. It's kind of like a family tree, right? Like even the Bible, right? It's like all these generations. It's a map of where you came from and how to get back. And there is something in us that's constantly trying to bind back. But I heard another definition of the word religio when it was used in the modern term. And it was, I believe, some Roman czar or something who coined it, and the religio was sort of the zeitgeist, is basically what it meant. So you could equate that to cult, right? Like they sort of solidify the occult as, okay, here's Catholic, there's the cult, there's the culture. It's all based on this this one way of thinking. and that manifests certain behaviors and um, what we see in the Western world. What we got, the Protestant ethic, as it's called.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
so anyway, I just wanted to make that point.
that's a good one.
Okay, so I want to ask you to kind of give us the rundown of your um, exposure to occult information.
Excellent. Yeah, when I was really young, growing up on a ranch and stuff, I was always close with nature. That was the first thing, and I actually I was really fascinated into the the fantasy video games, which a lot of these like role playing games, this is in the early '90s and the mid '90s, they had a lot of occult influence in them. Recognizing that now, but I gravitated to these type of games and even the information within the games as well, which eventually they're using characters from Norse tradition, Norse mythology, all types of Egyptian mythology, and I was really into that kind of stuff. So even when I got into my music career, my hobby was looking into occultism. So the first book or piece of occultism that I came across was actually kind of a more advanced book or section to look at, and it was Franz Barden, and it was Initiation into Hermetics. And I got this off of it was a recommendation off a podcast way back in the day, or actually a YouTube video, and I was like. He described the book, and I'm like, I'm interested in that. So I got the book, and it's pretty much a handbook of self-initiation, and that really just it blew my mind, and I just wanted to just keep going with it. As I was doing the practices that were in this initiation to Hermetics, which was straight Hermeticism, it was step by step type of book that you had to accomplish the step before you moved on to the next one. So it really was giving me a good taste of what occultism was, because we're talking about categories that I've never heard before. I mean, they don't teach this stuff in school. Definitely in the circles that I ran with, no one was talking about this type of spirituality. And I already had an awareness of what you would call New Age spirituality, and they weren't even going into this type of information. So I started just absorbing all types of authors, getting a plethora of books and a wide variety of mystery traditions. Now, I don't say that I specialize in one tradition. I have general knowledge of a lot of the traditions. The Golden Dawn, Freemasonry, Rosicrucian, Norse tradition. So, I mean, all kinds of this kind of stuff. The Cometian tradition. But I did notice that there were some common denominators in all of these traditions, and what they were talking about was the psychology, human psyche, the spiritual realm or the energetic realm, the ether, and nature, natural law. And nature is where I resonate with the animist and the paganist traditions. So I'm always looking out to nature and finding the correspondences with the external physical realm and the internal metaphysical realms as well. So they all had this common denominator of describing in their own way these laws of nature. And of course, fast forward 5, 6, 7 years, then I came across Mark Passio's work, which I came across his work. Actually, the first video I saw was about order followers. It wasn't about occultism. So I watched the Cult of Ultimate Evil, and then got into his natural law seminar, which was mind blowing, because it tied in all of those mystery traditions and the occultism, or classical occultism, you can call it. Kind of tied all of those in. He did a really good job at synthesizing and aggregating that type of information. And yeah, so that's my chronology.
Yeah, for me, it was, like I said, more thinking in sense of looking into different religions, and then And then once I got into Mark Passio's work, he really, broke down kind of the different traditions in a kind of simplistic way, but gave you the basics, and then really encouraged people to get into it. And I ended up going to Rudolf Steiner. He was one that I really connected with. And we can get into him, more in the future. He's got so much information. But the other thing that I got into was I had gotten around the same time I had started becoming aware of Bill Cooper and the book Behold a Pale Horse. And I was reading it around that same time, and then I started listening to his radio show. I believe you can find it on YouTube under Occult Agenda. I don't know if you've ever pulled that down, Will, but it's like 43, 44 episodes of his Hour of the Time radio show in the 1990s. And, the quick story with Bill Cooper, naval intelligence. He was in the Navy before that. He saw a UFO. They told him, don't say anything about it. He went into naval intelligence, got all this information about UFOs. He started wondering, is the information fake? And then he came up with the theory that they were faking alien sightings because they wanted a fake alien invasion at some point in the future. So then he got into the Kennedy assassination, and then he really started focusing on, well, who are these people that are running everything, and what do they believe? And then that's when he started researching the occult. And
That's that question, man. That question right there will take you right to the occult for sure.
Yeah. And I remember listening. I mean, that's a really good series to listen to because he does he goes through a lot of different material. And I remember him talking about a group called the Assassins, who are from like Arabia or something like that, somewhere in the Middle East, and that they are one of the original holders of this information, and setting up their group in a way that is similar to that you see in like the Knights Templar and the Freemasons and these secret societies. And again, like this apparently seems to have gone back way earlier than these groups. But
say that name again.
The Assassins.
The Assassins, got it.
Mm-hmm. And recently I've been delving into Crowley, Aleister Crowley, a little bit more. And Aleister Crowley, he was very much well versed in, I believe they called it Arabic mysticism, Sufi mysticism, I think specifically. But Aleister Crowley, he would always read the Quran. So I find that interesting too. The same thing with Rudolf Steiner. These people who study the occult, they study all these ancient belief systems, all, whether it be, whether you consider it religion, occultism. Both Rudolf Steiner and Crowley were both in some order of Rosicrucianism. It seems like Rosicrucianism is a really important one, especially in the modern Western world. It just seems like everyone is kind of like, did Rosicrucianism come before Freemasonry? Or are they right around the same time?
Let me check here. Actually, I got some notes. No, I think Rosicrucian did come before. Here, I got the exact date. Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, that's 1887. The Rosicrucians arrive in Pennsylvania. That's 1694.
Okay. Yeah, so they're a little further back. Because, I was listening to, this is someone that everyone should look into if you're interested in the occult. And this lady went deep, was Tracy Twyman. And I listened to an interview with her. She's deceased now. I listened to an interview with her on some radio show, some podcast, and she was talking about her book, The Baphomet. And that whole story is about the Knights Templar who, went to the Middle East and found all these ancient documents and found the truth of what the religion is, and allegedly they worshipped this this head that was like the head of the Baphomet, which is like a goat man. I don't know if people have seen it. No, you've seen it, Will.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure people have seen it, but the goat-headed god, who has, is like hermaphrodite, the famous image of Baphomet sitting with the children beneath him, her. But anyway, then she talks about how the Knights Templar, they got accused of worshiping Baphomet, and then that's when they got persecuted, and then the Knights of Templar broke up, and then the Freemasonry came up after that, and they were basically practicing the same rituals, although they weren't admitting to worshiping Baphomet. But that's another interesting thing is, where does where does this knowledge lead? That's some evidence that there is some actual entity that a lot of these practices may be worshiping. It takes a lot of discernment when you're getting into it to try to figure out, is this allegorical? So, it's the same with the Bible. The Bible it's almost like the first step. Like there's so many different levels you can read the Bible on. But then when you start asking the questions about like, well, what's this really mean? And what's this really based on? And you get into the astrotheology and, but it can be sort of difficult to figure out if the stuff you're looking at is supposed to be allegorical or if it's based on some true events that happened, true beings, true entities that existed. I'll give you another good example. Man, there's so much stuff we could talk about, but with Crowley, he's considered kind of, they called him the Beast. He was like the wickedest man in the world. And he had a, bad reputation. People think he was an intelligence agent for the British government.
Yeah.
A lot of different stories about that guy, but he did believe in practicing magic, and he did do like magical rituals, and he would like fast and, do all these, crazy rituals to try to manifest different things and see if he could manifest it. And a lot of that magic is based on summoning other entities like that are invisible, right? They were originally called the jinn, and at that time they weren't considered demons or angels. Demons used to just be spirits. It wasn't necessarily a negative connotation, but then there's a book that apparently was written by King Solomon, who also practiced magic apparently, and the book is all about summoning these demons. Now, when I was listening about this, they were saying that some people believe that these entities are actually just versions of ourselves or aspects of our higher selves or lower selves.
Yeah.
And that you can call on these things. So my point is you could look at it at so many different ways, and you can see how so many people are in fear, especially if you're told, oh, just pray to God and don't ask any questions and just follow these rules and then you'll be fine. Those people are going to have a hard time looking at this stuff because they're told,
they've been conditioned. They've been conditioned to think this stuff are demons and monsters and stuff like that. But yes, in occultism, these are parts of psyche, whether it's ancient, higher, lower, that that people are trying to activate within themselves, right? So, but yeah, some people will have a hard time. But another thing to keep in mind too is like classical occultism. Like when you dive into all the mystery traditions and all these great works, right, that are from 1500, 16, 1700, 1800, right? That was a big occult revival during that time period. That was then. There was like a context of the time period, right? There's also understanding concept and understanding like modern occultism,
Yeah.
right? It's like for instance, I mean, casting the circle of the Magi, right? What is that really? That's really focusing your using mentation, right? Mental activity on your space and recognizing your boundaries and understanding your own personal affirmations, but focusing on that point. It's like a form of concentration as well, and thinking about a certain aspect of your own psyche.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some modern techniques. It's like reading those things. Lighting candles in a circle, and using chalk and saying these ancient names 33 or 32 times and stuff. I mean, sure, that's going to have an effect, but it's going to have the same effect as if you say any kind of mantra and you harmonize with a beat or something and you focus on it, right? So it's kind of understanding the concept behind it, recognizing the context of those classical works, but mainly understanding the concept. And this is where programming and conditioning comes in, especially mainly with Christianity. That's what they did with this type of information.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So now you can't even, they don't even believe you should meditate, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like they think, evil entities are going to get in if you meditate, and
Yep.
you can't watch Harry Potter. This is where the witch trials come from. They don't want you tapping into any type of higher power. There's a clear war against the idea of spirit, from religion, from the Western world. You're supposed to be considered crazy. Rudolf Steiner has an amazing quote about this, that eventually they'll medicate us to where we won't have any connection to the spirit, and anyone that does talk about the spirit is going to be considered crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
that's nothing new, right? They've been doing that for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah, exactly. So, man, I don't know, we should probably wrap it up pretty soon. We've been talking quite a bit, and it was a good first episode. Maybe in the future we can focus on specific practices.
I think we should do a series on this, man, because I got some good. I've put together a pretty good notebook of just chronological order of traditions and information. I mean,
yeah,
a few guests come to mind that could probably definitely add to this.
Yeah. We had a few questions. Someone asked.
Scott Keller said, "What area are you in?" We're in California, Northern California.
Yeah.
Yanni, Plant Beauty Services. Good seeing you. It's been a little bit. Thanks for joining. Mark Passio is still Is Mark Passio still teaching the class at this time? Yes, he is. The how to become the true media class is going on till the end of December.
Yeah. Gonna get a lot more content creators coming out of there.
Here's a good quote from H.P. Blavatsky, 1831 to 1891. "The world is not prepared yet to understand the philosophy of occult sciences. Let them assure themselves first of all that there are beings in an invisible world, whether spirits of the dead or elementals, and that there are hidden powers in man which are capable of making a god of him on earth."
Ooh.
So
Don't tell that to the Christians.
Yep. Yep. I got some really good quotes too. And here's something that we can end on too, which might be cool for the next episode, right? With occult science, you got philosophy and practice. You need both of them, right? Philosophy to seek, to understand, to know the big, deep questions, and practice means putting it into play, right? Your rhetoric. So we're seeing the trivium in there too. Philosophy and practice. It's a big one. And also the distinction of mysticism and alchemy. Because a lot of people don't understand that, modern chemistry and science comes from occultism. It comes from mysticism and alchemy. Chemistry comes from alchemy. This is where it comes from. But do people really understand what true mysticism is and alchemy as well? So we'll just...
that's one reason why I wanted to do this episode too, because I think there's a point where, as I'm looking at all these different schools of thought and seeing the connections between them all, and it's like the thought crosses my mind, well, what am I learning this for? Right? Like, how do I apply this? How do I put this into action? Like, is it, it's at a certain point, it can be just like religion, right? It could just be, it's just these different belief systems, and you see how, they're kind of saying the same thing, and they're kind of doing the same thing, and there's the same symbols, but it's what am I doing with this knowledge? How do I apply this knowledge? So that is something I think we can get into more in the future.
Good point, dude. That's huge. Is it useful? Is it practical?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also I had written this down too, that like it does seem at a certain level like they're all saying the same thing. And so it points to that it's all based on one ancient true belief system, probably like original, way of being in the world. That, like we said, it gets lost through, in different ways of sharing it, but that knowledge can never be lost. So then it gets encoded in symbols and, in different practices and different rituals. And this is how it's passed down. Like you said, it's passed down like orally and through these traditions. And so, but it does seem to point to one true belief, true belief system, but one original belief system that all of these seem to somehow be connected to.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which is interesting.
For sure. Definitely. I think that's very much tied into animism.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, we'll definitely do another episode of this, because I got more stuff to say, but since it's a little late at night, we are going to
Corey
get
says
out of here.
deism. I said animism.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, Will, that was good. It was a good discussion. I have a lot more thoughts and notes, and we can do this again soon.
Yeah, man, it's good to be back. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we're gonna get it cracking.
Yeah, and always remember, put something good in the air and plant something good in the earth. Peace.
Gia.
The intention of Natural Freedom League is to expand the understanding of natural law, which is based on objective morality, and to expose the illegitimacy of the belief in authority, and thus the inherent immorality of all government. We be the Natural Freedom League, cause we become no longer unvegan. We seek in the wisdom, and that's why we did come to this prison of prism. And that's why the beat thumps, and that's why we speak up. We be the Natural Freedom League, cause we become no longer unvegan. We seek in the wisdom, and that's why we did come to this prison of prism. And that's why the beat thumps, and that's why we speak up. We be the